I was drafted into the Army in 1954.
It was January 15th, 1969.
November 15th, 1943.
22nd of May, 66. And there was a whole bunch of us, 27 of us from the county, all on the same day.
I woke up on September 11th of 2001 to watching the second tower hit the planes, and I was working at Spec Temp at the time and decided it was time for a change and to serve my country and get out of Paulding County.
At that time I was 18 years old and enjoyed a lot of freedoms, and it was time to do something, give back to my country.
It was a cadet program where you signed up and went into the Air Force into cadet training, and then as soon as you was 18, well, you went into the service. But then back then, they could put you wherever they wanted to.
You know, I always had an interest in the military. Even in elementary school, I was reading novels and things about the Civil War, and then in high school, I became very interested.
I enlisted before I even was out of school. We went on an early sign-up, I guess they call it. Even though the Vietnam War was going on, it's just that's what we did. You just step up and serve.
Come from a military family. My brother, he joined the Air Force and was a career officer in the Air Force, and I joined the Army to serve our country.
I enlisted mainly for the schooling in the Navy, which was electronics technician school. About the second or third day of boot camp was in auditorium, probably 500-600 kids in there maybe. And they started asking questions, and back then, if you got in trouble, you might go to jail or you could go to the service. So they started asking, said how many kids joined up to stay out of jail or out of reform schools, and a few hands popped up. And a couple other ones, and he said how many joined to go to school. Of course, my hand popped up with quite a few others. And lastly, he said, how many of you joined to serve your country? And just a few hands popped up, but it made you feel about that, not at all.
I was home, and they sent me a letter through the mail, and I read that letter and said, your friends have, I think it was like, your friends have required that you report to the draft board immediately. And so I went down to draft board, and they gave me a number, and from that point on it was just moving. I went from the draft board, then they processed some paperwork, and I caught a bus outside of Antwerp, about 3 miles outside of Antwerp, a Greyhound bus. I was married and had 2 children, and 1 child at the time, and I kissed my wife goodbye and got on a bus.
The start of my day was going into Fort Wayne, getting on the bus there, going to Indianapolis for induction in Indianapolis, and from there they shipped us out to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Fort Knox, Kentucky was where I took basic training. And they teach you how to march, they teach you your weapons, how to clean them, how to take care of them. They teach you how to make a bed if you didn't know how before. And you had to bounce a quarter off of that bed, or the inspector would tear it apart and say, do it over.
The deployment actually was out of San Diego. I went to Pearl Harbor, of course. That's one of your first stops. And then we went over into the Philippines. We were in Japan, Hong Kong, went down to Singapore. And we was actually in the war zone 2 different times, 2 occasions during that deployment.
The Battle of Bulge came along, they needed more infantrymen, and they took us out of the Air Force and put us in the infantry.
I was on an aircraft carrier for about 5 months. Then I got transferred to a destroyer escort.
Yes, I was in the Republic of South Vietnam, and our division was located in the Delta, the Mekong Delta. And we were the only American division in the Mekong Delta. So we were quite south of Vietnam, or quite south of Saigon, and we were located on the Mekong River.
It was about a 21-hour flight over there. went to land. We couldn't land because they were dropping mortars on the airstrip. So we had to fly around, land again. They did land and open the door, and just like heat and humidity, the country is very, very hot, very humid. And so that was kind of entering Vietnam there, and that aspect, not quite what I was hoping for there, for a smooth landing and a smooth entry to the country.
If you were in Vietnam, there wasn't any place that wasn't dangerous. So, yeah, it was dangerous, period.
When you're on an aircraft carrier, even though you're not in combat, danger is there 100% of the time. Everything you did was dangerous.
We were on DMZ in Korea, and a little town called Tondashan. There was 3 of us would get deployed to Vietnam about every 6-7 weeks, and we'd be there for 2 to 3 weeks, and then go back to Korea, and then we'd get orders to go back to Vietnam.
I fought in the First and Second Battle of Fallujah, which was the biggest urban conflict since the Battle of Way City.
I went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, as I mentioned, and then I flew to Korea. I was able to stand on that radar site and overlook the river and see North Korea. And it was different. It was quite an eye-opener, I guess I would say. It was how the people live. I seen the school kids, they would walk the ridges of the rice paddies to go to school. And we was out in the field, and when we were out in the field, we would dig holes to put our sea ration cans in. And so the school kids would come along and pick them cans up and take, and if there was any meat or anything in it, they would take it. That's how devastating it was for them to eat something. They didn't have 3 meals a day like we have.
I was in the States. I was at camp. I was a Marine Corps base the whole time. The Marine Corps, is under the Department of the Navy, so the medical personnel are Navy personnel that serve the Marine Corps. So I was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Learned later, years later, that there was a toxic water contamination at the camp. And I was there in the height of the contamination. They were washing their vehicles off and letting all these chemicals go down to the groundwater. And now the VA is covering veterans who have developed all kinds of cancers from that.
I went over on the Queen Mary and held 20,000 troops. That's a lot of soldiers, and you had to sleep. Like I had the bunk area from 6 to 6 in the daytime, say, and you had the bunk area from 6 to 6. And the other 12 hours you had to be out on deck.
We were just teenagers when we either were drafted or we volunteered. We were just fresh out of high school. And for a lot of people, it was hard on them because they're separated from their parents, their friends, their family, and then they're tossed into a conflict that was life and death. So it was no easy transition.
I was pretty young at the time. I was 17 when I graduated high school, 20 when I graduated from nursing school, so I was 21 when I was commissioned an officer in the Navy Nurse Corps. And I've never really been away from home much. So it was my first real experience of being away from home. So it was a time to grow up.
You missed all your friends and family and parents and grandparents, and actually had a grandfather who was in World War I, and he passed away when I was overseas.
Wasn't the time of cell phones or anything, so there was no contact other than by mail.
It's always difficult to be separated from your family, your friends. Stay in touch mainly through letters. I did have the opportunity, I think, twice during my deployment to call home.
I had a cassette player and people, or my friends, and my wife had one at that time also. So that was communications.
I wrote letters back. I had 2 children when I was over in Korea, And I wrote letters back to Maxine, and it would take probably 9 days sometimes to get a letter back and forth, and so she would write me about every day. And so when I would get 4 or 5 letters back, I would stack them up with a postmark and then open the earliest one first so I would see what went on with it. And that's the only contact we had. You didn't have a telephone, you didn't have cell phones, you couldn't call over, you just had to understand that this is going to be the way it is.
It's a learning process. It's a learning period of your life. I had never really been out of the area, just meeting people from all over the country. It was very interesting.
Well, it probably made me grow up a little bit. I don't know, it took a long time to do that, it seems like.
I always made it a point to, if there were tours available in every country that I went into, I would go on a tour and see that country.
I enjoyed basically the conformity of being in the service, the discipline, the values it instilled in you, and those were life lessons that you carried for the rest of your life.
I think it teaches you to be grateful for what you got.
It taught me to respect what you have, to stand up for yourself, It taught you right from wrong if you didn't already know that. A lot of people, when they joined the services, or if they were drafted, they didn't have that feeling, but I think that when they got out that they probably did.
I think you learn maybe to respect the flag. That's probably one of the most important things. I like going someplace, seeing new countries and that, and I love being at sea. I didn't know it at the time, but now I'd love to go back out. On a ship, you create a bond with people because you're with them every day for sometimes a couple of years. And I sometimes feel closer to people that I haven't seen in some of them 30, 40 years. I talk to them, I maybe see them at reunions.
The guys you serve with, you'll never forget them. You're always, you always have somebody to talk to with the things you go through together, and they understand what you go through. I have guys like that will die, willing to die for you. That's a brotherhood that never goes away.
We gave up a lot of things, personal things, personal lives. People were hurt. I was in an accident and got wounded when I was overseas, so everybody gave up things.
I was wounded June 18th of 2004 and August 7th of 2004 during combat operations in Fallujah and Mahmudiya. I was hit with a shrapnel from a mortar round in my spine, and I was also hit with shrapnel from a grenade while clearing buildings.
We were just busy 24/7. We didn't have any days off. So when we went across the equator coming back, we had Sunday twice. So that was the only time we had any really downtime when we were deployed.
You're away from your family, away from your friends. You miss out on opportunities that you may have had available if you were not in the service.
Now when people get out of the service, they're deployed in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever they went. When they come back, they're greeted with open arms. Well, during the Vietnam War, we were spat on. I was proud that I was a Navy veteran, but we didn't really talk about it, or we were not warmly greeted when we got home, and we just didn't say a lot about it.
I look back at World War II veterans and World War II soldiers and that. They were drafted in like 1941, 42, and they didn't see their families and that for almost 3 years at various times. And I guess my heart goes out to them. I look at the fact that all those who sacrificed and didn't come back, brothers and aunts and uncles and that, they didn't come back. They made the ultimate sacrifice.
There was a wall dedicated while I was in Iraq in 2004. It's called the Middle Eastern Conflict Wall in Marseilles, Illinois. And I was just through there last weekend, and I had the opportunity to pay respects to my brothers that I've lost. I lost 8 of my Marines while I was there. I mean, I've watched them give that ultimate sacrifice. When you see guys' names that you've served with beside, and you've watched them, give that ultimate sacrifice, and then you come home and you see their families and you talk to them, you never forget their sacrifice. And it's just one of the things that, I mean, they say time heals all wounds, but sometimes it just don't. Some of these guys, like Shane Cabino, he enlisted when he was 17 years old, and only 18 years old, and he, you know, was hit with an IED and lost his life over there. Them are heroes. I mean, a lot of us guys that have been to war, they would get called a hero, and we're not heroes, but I've had the honor to walk amongst heroes, and them are the men that gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country who did not come home. Freedom isn't free. I mean, some of these kids take advantage of a lot of these things that, you know, that men and women have died for, and I mean, that's like, they just need to realize, you know, that this way of life, it came at a cost, and it needs to be taught, and that way they learn, you know, hey, there's men and women that have sacrificed, you know, the ultimate sacrifice to make sure we can live the way we do today.
Freedom is not free. You have to fight for it, and you have to work for it, and it's not to be taken for granted, because we can lose our freedom real fast.
I think I'm proud of the country that we are free. We are a free nation. We have the right to vote. We can do what we want to do. If you want to go to Fort Wayne to a movie or shop or anything, there's no restrictions on what we can do.
It definitely is a time of strife and conflict, but our country is over 200 years old. It's survived on its basic principles, and it's good that our country is diversified and everyone has an opinion. If it wouldn't be for our forefathers, we probably wouldn't be able to enjoy those rights. Always remember, you know, the country has went through many times of strife, but they've always come together united.
When you see some of these young kids that are out there, you know, when they stand, you know, for the Pledge of Allegiance, they stand for the national anthem, and they're taught the values, you know, that have been passed on this country is made of. That just still gives me hope.
I honor the veterans, the sacrifices they made for everyone to be free, your generation and the generations to come up. Every veteran should be known that he is special.
Be respectful for veterans, because even though they don't tell you what they did, and I certainly wouldn't tell you everything that happened, because some things are just better left untold.
Just be proud of your area and work to make things better for everybody around here.
Be proud of America.
How did you feel when you were first
Proud.
there?
Proud to serve the country.
I have no regrets doing it, and I'd do it again if I could.
It's a plus to be in the military, to learn with other people, and to serve the country. It's a great thing.
I've always been proud of what I've done. You know, I've never complained about the hardships that I went through, and I probably never will. I probably had some health issues that, as a result of Vietnam, but that's just life. You got to do what you got to do.
It's a unique thing to be a veteran. It's like, I think, less than 8% of the population were actual, you know, veterans of foreign conflict. So, if I could say one thing about that, it's you're proud, and you know, you don't go around asking for recognition, but it was an honor to serve.